At my brother's promotion party, standing on a rooftop overlooking the Seattle skyline, surrounded by the city's elite, he raised his champagne glass and announced loudly, "This is my sister, Sierra. No degree, no future, just the family gardener who never quite figured out a real career." Everyone laughed. My parents beamed at him proudly. My aunt nodded knowingly. My cousin smirked. I felt every eye on me, waiting for me to crumble. Instead, I smiled, lifted my own glass of cheap sparkling water, and said clearly, "Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I walked out. The room went completely silent. Before we find out just how badly they underestimated her, drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I did not go home to cry. I did not call a friend to vent. I went home to pack. My studio apartment was small, sparse, and efficient, much like the role I had played in my family for the last 6 years. As I folded my clothes into boxes, I did not feel sadness. I felt the cold, hard clarity of an accountant finally closing a ledger that had been bleeding red ink for too long. They thought I was walking away because my feelings were hurt. They were wrong. I was walking away because the contract had expired. To understand why I did not scream at him on that rooftop, you have to understand the architecture of our family. It was not built on love. It was built on utility. 6 years ago, when I was 22, the market crashed. My parents, Gary and Susan, were real estate moguls on paper, but in reality, they were overleveraged and drowning in liquidity issues. I was in the middle of a master's program for landscape architecture, top of my class, ready to reshape the world. Logan was finishing his MBA, partying his way through grad school on the family dime. When the crash hit, my parents sat me down. They did not ask me to help, they told me it was my duty. They said Logan could not be distracted, that his future was the family's ticket out. They needed someone in the trenches. So, I dropped out. I did not just manage their properties, I saved them. For 6 years, I was the one waking up at 3 in the morning to handle burst pipes because we could not afford emergency plumbers. I was the one negotiating with angry contractors, filing city permits, and navigating zoning laws that would make a seasoned lawyer dizzy. But I was not just a property manager. That was the lie they told the neighbors. In the quiet hours between crises, I was the ghost in the machine. When Logan landed his first job at Vanguard Urban Planning, he was drowning. He could not read a blueprint to save his life. So I did it. I sat at the kitchen table, redlining his drafts, sketching sustainable drainage systems, and calculating load-bearing ratios for his visionary concepts. I built his career brick by brick, sketch by sketch, while he took the credit and I took the trash out. You might wonder why I stayed. Why would anyone endure 6 years of erasure? That is the trap of normalized cruelty. It does not happen all at once. It happens by degrees. It is a slow conditioning process where you are taught that your pain is the price of admission to the family. They did not chain me to that life, they gaslit me into believing I was the only thing holding the roof up. They framed my exploitation as loyalty. They called my silence strength. It is a psychological prison without bars, built on the idea that if you just work hard enough, if you just sacrifice enough, eventually they will love you for it. But standing on that rooftop, watching Logan laugh at my expense, the conditioning broke. I realized I was not their daughter or their sister. I was an asset. And a depreciating one at that. They did not mock me because I was useless. They mocked me because they needed to believe I was beneath them to justify using me. If I was a genius, their exploitation was a crime. If I was just a gardener, their exploitation was charity. I taped the last box shut. I picked up my laptop, the one containing 6 years of property data, maintenance schedules, and design files, and I did not just close it. I wiped the local drive. I logged into the family cloud server, the one I had built and maintained, and I revoked my own access. I canceled the autopay on the utility bills I had been covering with my own meager stipend. I deleted the shared calendar where I tracked every inspection, every tax deadline, every renewal. I left my key on the counter. I did not leave a note. Notes are for people who want to be found. I walked out into the cool Seattle night, got into my 10-year-old sedan, and drove to a short-term rental I had booked under a different name. I sat on the edge of a strange bed, staring at a blank wall. For the first time in 6 years, my phone was silent. No crisis. No demands. No Logan needing me to fix his math. It was not happiness yet. It was something better. It was the silence of a bridge that had been burned to the ground. 3 days after I vanished, my phone finally buzzed. It was not a frantic search party. It was not a tearful voicemail from my mother asking if I was safe. It was a text from my father. The water heater at the rental on 4th Street is leaking again. Tenant is furious. Handle it. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the bare walls of my new reality. They did not even know I was gone. They just knew the service had been interrupted. I did not reply. I blocked the number. Then I blocked my mother. Then I blocked Logan. It was not an act of anger. It was an administrative task, like closing a bank account that had been charging me overdraft fees for a lifetime. But the silence did not last. A week later, I received a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Angela. She was a structural engineer at a rival firm, someone I had met briefly at industry mixers, the kind where I stood in the corner holding Logan's coat while he charmed investors. Her message was brief: "We need to talk. It is about the Cascadia project. Meet me at the roast house on Pike. Now." I almost did not go. I wanted to be done with that world. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. When I walked into the coffee shop, Angela did not waste time with pleasantries. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from staring at blueprints until your eyes burn. She slid a tablet across the scratched wooden table. On the screen was a rendering. It was beautiful. It was ambitious. It was a 60-story residential tower draped in living greenery, a vertical forest, designed to scrub carbon from the air and recycle its own gray water. Vanguard just won the city contract with this, Angela said, her voice hard. Logan presented it yesterday. The board is calling him a visionary. They say he is going to change the skyline of Seattle. I looked closer. My breath hitched in my throat. I knew every line of that rendering. I knew the specific species of drought-resistant fern depicted on the 20th floor. I knew the curvature of the solar glass on the atrium. I knew it because I had drawn it. I had sketched the initial concept on a napkin 3 years ago. I had spent nights refining the irrigation channels, balancing the aesthetics with the brutal reality of hydraulic engineering. It was my design. It was the vertical forest I had dreamed of building, the one Logan had laughed at, calling it an expensive chia pet. He stole it, I whispered. It was not a question. He did not just steal the concept, Angela said, swiping to the next image. It was a schematic view. He stole the files. The metadata on these submission documents shows they were modified from your laptop. He stripped your name from the author properties, but he was sloppy. He missed the revision history in the CAD layers. I sat back, the room spinning slightly. This was not just familial cruelty anymore. This was not just my brother being a jerk at a party. This was theft. Grand larceny of intellectual property. He had taken the one thing I had left, my mind, my creativity, and he was using it to buy his way into the history books. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, replacing the lingering sadness. I realized then that I had not just lost a brother. I had been robbed by a con artist who happened to share my DNA. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Angela. "Because I know Logan," she said, taking a sip of her black coffee. "He can sell ice to a polar bear, but he cannot build an igloo. He is going to get people hurt. And I hate thieves." I looked at the tablet one last time. I saw the accolades, the press release hailing Logan as the architect of the future. He had taken my voice. He had taken my work. He thought he had one. But as I looked at the complex irrigation systems detailed in the schematic, a small, dark smile touched my lips. He had stolen the car, but he did not know how to drive it. And he definitely did not know that I had the only key to the engine. I thanked Angela and walked out into the rain. I did not go to the police. I did not call a lawyer. Not yet. I went back to my studio, opened a new, encrypted laptop, and started a new file. I named it, The Counterweight. If Logan wanted to be the visionary, I would let him. I would let him climb as high as he could, right up to the penthouse of my stolen tower. And then, I would watch him realize he had forgotten to build the stairs. The next month was a study in silence. I found a job at a boutique ecological firm under a contract status. It was not glamorous. I was drafting drainage plans for suburban parks, but it was honest work, and for the first time in my life, the paycheck had my name on it. I paid my own rent. I bought my own groceries. I owed no one. Meanwhile, across the city, the cracks were beginning to form. You see, the Cascadia project was a beast. A vertical forest is not just a building with plants on it. It is a living, breathing machine. Soil is heavy. Water is heavy. Trees grow, and as they grow, they add weight. Wind loads on a structure covered in vegetation are exponentially higher than on smooth glass. To make it work, you need specific, complex load-bearing calculations for every single floor. You need to account for the soil density when wet versus dry. You need to calculate the shear force of a maple tree in a 60-mile-per-hour gale. I had never written those final calculations down. They were in my head, a puzzle I was still solving when I left. I had the formulas, the specific soil mixtures that would be light enough to not crush the steel beams but nutrient-dense enough to sustain the forest. Logan had the pretty pictures. He did not have the math. It started with a text from a number I did not recognize. Hey, sis, it is Logan. Mom is worried sick. Call us. I deleted it. 2 days later, a voicemail. Sierra, come on. Stop being dramatic. I need to ask you something about the old files on your laptop. The password is not working. I deleted it. Then, the flowers arrived at my old apartment complex. My former landlord called me to let me know. Big bouquet, he said. Expensive. Card says, family is forever, please come home. He was trying to love bomb me. He was trying to play the worried brother card because he had hit a wall. His engineers were probably staring at the blueprints, realizing the numbers did not add up. They were realizing that if they built the tower as drawn, the upper floors would buckle under the weight of the wet soil during the first winter storm. He needed me. He needed the gardener to come fix the mess that a visionary had made. I sat in my studio, listening to the rain hit the window. I imagined the panic in the boardroom at Vanguard. I imagined Logan sweating in his tailored suit, trying to bluff his way through meetings with structural engineers who were asking questions he could not answer. He could not admit he did not know. That would expose the theft. He could not figure it out himself because he lacked the fundamental knowledge. He was trapped in a cage of his own ego. I did not intervene. I did not send a helpful note. I let the silence stretch. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and now the account was closed. I focused on my work. I designed a rain garden for a community center. I helped a local school fix their drainage issues. I built small, real things while Logan tried to build a lie in the sky. But then, the game changed. Angela texted me late on a Tuesday night. You need to see this. It was a photo of a document from the city planning office. A safety report. It claimed that the load-bearing tests had been completed and passed. It was signed by an independent inspector. I zoomed in on the figures. They were fake. They were boilerplate numbers copied from a standard glass and steel skyscraper, completely ignoring the thousands of tons of soil and biomass. Logan was not just incompetent anymore. He was forging safety documents. He was going to pour that concrete. He was going to build a death trap in the middle of downtown Seattle because he was too proud to admit he stole a design he could not build. My blood ran cold. This was not just about intellectual property or my hurt feelings. If that atrium collapsed, people would die. The workmen, the future tenants, the pedestrians on the street. He was gambling human lives to protect his promotion. I closed my laptop. The time for silence was over. I could not just watch him fail. I had to stop him. I spent the next 3 nights compiling everything. I dug up my original sketchbooks, the ones with the coffee stains and the scribbled margins. I found the emails I had sent to myself years ago with the soil density research. I pulled the metadata from my cloud backups that proved I had created the vertical forest, core geometry 6 months before Logan even pitched it. I built a dossier. It was not a pitch deck. It was an indictment. I organized it chronologically, technically, and irrefutably. I laid out the math, the real math, side by side with his forged reports. I highlighted the failure points in red. Collapse imminent at 40% load. Sheer failure at floor 20. I printed it out. 1 copy for me. 1 copy for the city. I put on my coat. I was not the gardener anymore. I was the demolition expert. The day of the Cascadia groundbreaking was picture perfect. The sky was a crisp, clear blue, the kind that makes glass skyscrapers gleam like jewels. Vanguard had rented a massive white tent filled with champagne towers, investors, and city officials. In the center of it all was Logan, holding a gold-plated shovel, beaming for the cameras. My parents were in the front row, looking like royalty, soaking up the applause they believed belonged to them by genetic right. I did not wear a disguise. I wore a tailored black suit and carried a simple clipboard. I did not walk toward my brother, I walked toward the city inspector, a man named Mr. Henderson, who was sipping sparkling water near the stage. Angela walked beside me, her own presence a silent endorsement of the data we carried. I waited until Logan started his speech. He was talking about legacy and innovation, words he had learned to pronounce but never understood. As he paused for dramatic effect, I stepped forward. I did not shout. I did not make a scene. I simply handed the thick dossier to Mr. Henderson. "Excuse me, Inspector," I said, my voice cutting through the hush of the crowd. "I believe you are missing the addendum to the safety report. Specifically, the load-bearing calculations on page 40. Logan froze on stage. His smile did not drop, it twitched, a glitch in the programming. "Sierra," he laughed, nervous and tight. "What are you doing? We are in the middle of a ceremony." I ignored him. I looked only at the inspector. The structural concrete specified in the permit cannot support the wet soil density of a vertical forest. If you pour that foundation today, the atrium will shear at the 20th floor within 6 months. The collapse will be catastrophic. Mr. Henderson opened the file. He saw the red ink. He saw the forged signatures side by side with the real engineering limits. He saw the math that proved my brother was building a tomb. He looked up, his face pale, and signaled to the foreman. "Shut it down," he said. "Shut the equipment down. Now." That was the moment the narcissist broke. A normal person, faced with the news that they were about to accidentally kill people, would be horrified. They would ask about the safety. They would worry about the lives at risk. But Logan did not care about the lives. He cared about the stage. He threw the shovel down. It clattered loudly against the podium. "You are ruining this," he screamed, his face turning a violent shade of red. "You are doing this on purpose. You are just jealous because I am the one up here. You are trying to humiliate me." It was a perfect display of narcissistic injury. He was not worried that his building would fall down, he was worried that his image was falling down. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is a gardener. She does not know anything. She is just a bitter dropout who could not hack it." I did not argue. I did not defend my credentials. I just pointed to the file in the inspector's hands. The math does not care about my degree, Logan. And gravity does not care about your promotion. The investors were already moving. I saw them pulling out their phones, making frantic calls. The press photographers had lowered their cameras, sensing the shift from celebration to crime scene. And my parents? They were standing frozen, watching their golden child melt down in a tantrum of ego while the police cars pulled up to the curb. That was when the reality hit them. I saw my mother look at Logan, then at me, and then at the investors fleeing the tent. She realized in that second that the empire she thought she had built was actually a house of cards I had been holding up with my bare hands for 6 years. She realized that without me to fix the plumbing, to balance the books, to do the math, they did not have a legacy. They had a liability. She took a step toward me, her eyes wide with a terrifying clarity. "Sierra," she whispered. "Fix this. Please." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched me sacrifice my 20s to keep her comfortable, who had laughed when I was mocked. "I cannot," I said. "I am just the gardener." I turned and walked away, leaving them in the ruins of the future they had stolen. The aftermath was not a battle. It was a controlled demolition. Vanguard fired Logan before the sun went down. He was blacklisted from every major firm on the West Coast, facing criminal charges for falsifying safety documents. But the real collapse happened at home. Without me there to juggle the creditors, manage the maintenance, and smooth over the tenants, my parents' real estate portfolio disintegrated. It turns out, you cannot pay a mortgage with pride. The banks foreclosed on their rental properties one by one. They lost the income streams. Then they lost their own home. I did not intervene. I did not offer a loan. I let the natural consequences of their incompetence take root. 6 months later, I stood on a vacant lot in the industrial district. It was a small parcel of land, overgrown with weeds, but the soil was good. I had bought it at a foreclosure auction. It used to belong to my parents. It was one of the properties I had managed for years, the one I had begged them to develop into something sustainable, which they had ignored because it was not flashy enough. I bought it fair and square with the money I earned from my own firm. I stood there with Angela, looking at the blueprints for my new headquarters. It would not be a 60-story tower. It would be a modest, net-zero studio built with recycled materials and integrated rainwater systems. It would be real. It would be safe. And it would be mine. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a blocked number, my father, likely calling from a prepaid phone to ask for, just a small loan, to get them back on their feet. I did not feel anger. I did not feel guilt. I just felt the cool breeze off the Puget Sound. I realized then that revenge is not about making people suffer. It is about letting them live in the world they created, while you go out and build a better one. I had spent years being the foundation for people who treated me like dirt. Now, I was standing on my own ground. I looked at Angela. "Let us pour the concrete," I said. She smiled. "The math checks out." I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the construction crew start their engines. It was the sound of a new beginning. I was not the invisible daughter anymore. I was not the dropout. I was the architect of my own life, and for the first time, the structure was sound. If you have ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up because the people who were supposed to support you actually tore you down, share this story. Let us remind everyone that the best foundation is the one you lay yourself.